My name is Mary Gregory, 23 years old. For the longest time, I thought my childhood was stitched together with the kind of magic people only see in movies. My dad, Ethan, had this ability to turn a cramped two-bedroom apartment into an entire universe. One where balcony tomatoes were jungle forts, where castles and burnt pancakes were gourmet meals, because he made them with a grin that lit up the whole room. But even back then, buried beneath the laughter and the make-believe tiny cracks formed in the walls of our home. Cracks shaped like my mother Fiona, always hovering, always criticizing, always dissatisfied with a life Dad and I would have chosen 1,000 times over. Dad used to joke that she had a brain built for spreadsheets and a heart that never got the memo. But even as a kid, I sensed it wasn't just perfectionism. There were moments, quiet ones, where she'd stare at Dad the same way someone stares at a flawless vase with a hairline fracture, terrified it might shatter with one wrong breath. Sometimes I'd catch her looking at me like that too, and I used to wonder what memory or regret she saw when she looked at my face. Everything changed the day Dad got sick. Pancreatic cancer. 2 words that sucked the oxygen out of our lives. He tried to pretend things were normal, cracking jokes, winking at me from behind Fiona's back when she started obsessing over medical bills, but I could see the exhaustion deepening in his bones. At night when Fiona thought I was asleep, I'd hear them arguing in hushed tones, not about him dying, about money, about responsibilities, about what would happen to me. One night I heard Grandpa Henry's voice, steady, disappointed. "She's just a child, Fiona. Try being her mother for once." Her reply was sharp enough to draw blood. "Don't lecture me. You don't know everything." I never forgot that. As Dad faded, I watched Fiona put on a masterclass performance in public grief, crying in grocery store aisles, clinging to neighbors, dramatically dropping dishes like the weight of life was too much to bear. But at home, she barely spoke to me. Sometimes I wondered if my face carried too much of Dad's features, if my existence itself became a reminder she couldn't bear. When Dad died, the silence in the apartment grew thick and suffocating. Fiona disappeared into her bedroom for hours, sometimes days, emerging only for work or obligatory phone calls. Meals vanished from the table. Conversations turned into brief clipped exchanges. I learned to make cereal for dinner. I learned not to knock on her door. I learned to not expect things from her. If it weren't for Grandpa Henry, I don't know where I would have ended up. He showed up one afternoon, took one look at my hollow eyes, and wrapped me in the kind of hug that made my lungs work again. "You're coming with me," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. His old Victorian house smelled like cedar and warm tea. Its floors creaked with stories instead of tension. He let me talk when I wanted to talk and let me be silent when I needed silence. I found pieces of myself there, pieces that Fiona never bothered to look for. I lived with him for years. Fiona called sometimes, her voice brittle and distant. "How's school? Good." "Okay. I'm busy. Talk later." She rarely did. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, she showed up without warning. She stepped out of a taxi in a bright yellow dress, makeup, flawless smile wide like she'd won some invisible prize. "Mary, pack your things," she chirped. "You're coming home." I blinked at her. Grandpa blinked too. "Why?" I asked. "Because we're starting over," she said, waving off the question like it annoyed her. A fresh chapter. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something about her energy felt urgent, desperate even, like she needed me back, not wanted me. Still, Grandpa rested a gentle hand on my shoulder. "It's your choice, Mary," he said softly. I wish I could say I made the right one, but I was 17, hopeful, and stupidly desperate for any sign that my mother still wanted me. So I went. Walking into the apartment that used to be my home felt like stepping into someone else's life. A tall man stood in the living room, a stranger with polished shoes and a rigid posture. Next to him was a younger girl, maybe 15, with glossy hair and the kind of confidence people wear like perfume. Fiona beamed. "Mary, meet Greg and his daughter Mia. They're family now." Greg gave me a stiff nod. Mia gave me a once-over that felt like she was assessing whether I'd fit into her version of acceptable. "Hi," I managed. The apartment wasn't mine anymore. I could feel it in the rearranged furniture and the photos on the walls, where once my family's memories hung. Now there were pictures of Fiona and Greg at fancy brunches, Mia smiling at ballet recitals, Mia posing at beaches. Fiona had built a new life, and I wasn't in any of the frames. "Let me show you your room," Fiona said. Except it wasn't my room. It was Mia's now. String lights, posters, clothes everywhere. No trace of me remained. "I moved your things to the guest room," Fiona said casually. "Mia needs space. You're older, you'll manage. Older. As if being older made losing my own room less painful. As if I hadn't already lost enough. The guest room was barely big enough for a bed, let alone the pieces of my life I'd carried back from Grandpa's house. As I stood there trying to swallow the sting, I heard Mia's voice float down the hallway. Can she not put her stuff near mine? I like things neat. Neat. She said it like I was clutter. Fiona, without looking at me, replied, She'll stay out of your way. Don't worry. That was my welcome home. And deep down in the pit of my stomach, something whispered that this wasn't a new beginning. It was the beginning of an unraveling. If someone had walked into that apartment during my first week back, they might have thought Fiona was a warm, involved mother of 2 girls, one biological, one step doing her best to blend a new family. But from the inside, it felt like watching a staged performance where every spotlight fell on Mia, while I stood in the dark wings invisible. From day one, Mia made herself comfortable in the role of beloved daughter. She'd glide into a room, and Fiona's entire demeanor would soften, her voice warmer, her laughter louder, her patience endless. Meanwhile, I'd speak, and Fiona would blink like she was waking from a dream, startled to remember I was there. Dinner was the first real taste of the new family dynamic. Mia, Mom, can we do pasta more often? You know the kind Greg likes, Fiona. Of course, sweetie. Anything you want. Greg would hum, approvingly pat Mia's shoulder, then glance at me with a sort of polite pity, like I was a roommate who'd overstayed her welcome. I'd open my mouth to contribute something, anything, and Mia would seamlessly cut me off. Mom, look at this dance routine I learned. Dad, I got an A on my math quiz. You'll never guess who texted me today. And Fiona, she'd abandon entire conversations mid-sentence just to turn toward Mia, eyes shining with pride. It wasn't just favoritism. It was erasure. School became my refuge, though I never admitted that out loud. I'd stay late under the pretense of group projects, tutoring sessions, anything that kept me out of the apartment. But even then, the awareness followed me everywhere that the space I'd once called home wasn't mine anymore. The worst part wasn't even Mia's attitude. It was how quietly cruel she was. Never loud enough for Fiona or Greg to reprimand, but sharp enough to draw blood. One afternoon, I knocked on what used to be my door. Hey, Mia, I said carefully. Can I grab a few books from the shelf? She didn't even look up from her phone. Sure. Just don't mess up my stuff. My stuff, my books, my shelf, my room. I walked inside and found her clothes spilling out of the closet I once organized by color. Fairy lights I'd saved for glowed behind her headboard. Posters covered the walls where my childhood photos once hung. You're standing on my dance shoes, she said suddenly. I stepped aside immediately. Sorry. It's okay, she replied sweetly. I know you're not used to nicer things. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The house wasn't the only thing changing. Fiona's spending habits did too. When Mia casually mentioned wanting ballet lessons, Fiona didn't hesitate, not even long enough to blink. Of course, you'd be wonderful at ballet, sweetheart. It took her 3 clicks and a credit card swipe to sign Mia up for private classes. I stood there remembering my own childhood, how I begged for dance lessons until my throat hurt. Fiona had told me we couldn't afford it. And what about me? I asked quietly, struggling to keep the tremor out of my voice. Fiona gave me a bland look. Mia has real talent, Mary. You should be supportive. Supportive. Like I wasn't already clinging to scraps of space and affection in this house. Later, Mia twirled around the living room while Fiona clapped, like her daughter had just performed at the Met. Greg filmed it on his phone, nodding proudly. You're a natural, he said. Mia basked in the glow. Then she turned her head just slightly toward me, smirk, sharpened like a blade. The cracks widened the day Mia got a brand new iPhone. Fiona bought it without hesitation because Mia had complained her old one was lagging. Meanwhile, mine was an ancient hand-me-down that died if I looked at it for too long. Mom, I said hesitantly, my phone barely works anymore. Could I? You'll get one when it's necessary, Fiona cut in, her tone clipped. But Mia actually uses hers, she snapped. For school, for ballet, for everything. Mia chimed in with a saccharine smile. I mean, it's not my fault I'm busier. Greg laughed softly. Busy, right. Busy making me feel like a visitor in my own life. I truly tried to stay calm, to be the bigger person, but Fiona kept tightening the noose. One night I waited patiently near the counter while Fiona cooked. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the small kitchen. Mom, can we talk about my college plans? I asked. She opened her mouth to respond, but Mia waltzed in, whining dramatically. Mom, I can't figure out this math homework. Oh, honey, come here, Fiona cooed, instantly wiping her hands and rushing to Mia's side. What about later? I asked. Later, Fiona said, already walking away. Later didn't exist. Later was always for Mia. The day everything snapped started like any other dull, predictable suffocating. I'd been accepted to State University, finance and business management, my ticket out. I decided to share the news during dinner, hoping Fiona might just once be happy for me. Mom, Greg, I have exciting news, I said, keeping my voice steady. I got into State University. A beat. A flicker of silence. Fiona's eyes met Greg's in some coded exchange that made my stomach twist. Actually, Fiona said slowly, Greg and I have been talking. We don't think you should go to college right now. What my fork clattered onto my plate. College isn't for everyone. Greg chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. You should start working. Save money. Build responsibility. I don't need to save money, I said, pulse pounding. Dad left me a college fund. It's for this. Exactly this. Fiona shifted, her expression tightening. About that fund, she began. Ice crept up my spine. What about it? Mia has been excelling in school, she said brightly. She has real potential. We think it'd be better to use the fund for her education. It felt like a punch. You want to take my college fund and give it to Mia? She's talented, Greg said smugly. It's the right thing to do. Stepsister, I snapped, my voice shaking. And absolutely not. Dad left that money for me. Fiona's face hardened like concrete. You're being selfish. Family shares. I stared at her. Families don't steal. Her voice turned cold. If you can't support this family, maybe you don't belong here. You're kicking me out, I whispered. If you're going to act like this, then yes, she replied. This family doesn't need your negativity. Mia smirked down at her plate. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I packed my things that night the same way she'd packed my memories into garbage bags years later. Greg avoided me. Fiona locked herself in her room. Mia walked past me, humming. I stepped into the night air, holding everything I owned in 2 ripped bags. I called Grandpa Henry. Come home, he said, voice steady and warm. You always have a place here. And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. Life with Grandpa Henry felt like stepping back into color after years of grayscale. His house didn't just shelter me, it breathed for me when I couldn't catch my own breath. He knew not to push, not to pry. Instead, he gave me space to rebuild myself piece by piece. College came like a sunrise I'd been waiting years to see. I threw myself into classes, clubs, part-time, work, anything that made me feel in control of my life again. I called Grandpa every few days sometimes just to tell him about a stubborn accounting professor or a new cafe I'd discovered. He listened, every time. Fiona, Greg, and Mia silence, for years. And honestly, I didn't miss them. Still, even while I thrived, there were nights when fragments of my old life slipped in through cracks in my resolve. The look Fiona gave me when she dismissed me, Mia's smirk the day she moved into my room. Greg's condescending tone. Sometimes I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a mother could choose a stranger's child over her own. But every time despair crept back in, Grandpa's voice pulled me out. You're stronger than anyone gives you credit for, Mary, including yourself. I clung to those words more than he ever knew. It was a Wednesday morning, bright, warm, deceptively peaceful. I had just stepped out of my morning lecture, stretching my back and digging in my backpack for a granola bar when my phone buzzed. Fiona Waters. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. I hadn't seen it in so long it almost looked fake. My thumb hovered over the decline button. Curiosity, stupid and stubborn, won. Hello, my voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. Fiona's voice was flat, emotionless. Your grandfather passed away last night. The funeral is Thursday. 2 p.m., Hartford Funeral Home. That was it. No condolences, no pause to see if I was okay. She may as well have been reading a weather report. The world tilted. My phone slipped from my hand. I barely remember sinking to the floor of the hallway or my roommate kneeling beside me, pulling me into her arms as sobs ripped through me. I cried until my lungs burned, until my hands shook. Grandpa was gone. The one person who never wavered. The one person who stayed. Thursday felt like a blur, wrapped in fog. I arrived at the funeral early, dressed in a simple black dress that suddenly felt too tight, too stiff, too wrong. The air smelled like lilies and cold stone. People whispered condolences I barely heard. And just when the pastor began speaking, the back door creaked open. Fiona swept in like she owned the place. Sleek black dress, structured hat with a veil, perfect makeup. Greg followed somber in an expensive suit. Mia wore designer black, her lips glossy, her posture immaculate. They didn't sit with me. They didn't acknowledge me. They slid silently into the back row, like uninvited royalty. I stared straight ahead, refusing to let their presence poison the moment I had left with Grandpa. But grief became heavier with every passing second, knowing the three people who'd spat me out of their lives were now leeching off my final goodbye. After the service, I drove to Grandpa's house. My sanctuary. Or so I thought. When I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. Garbage bags were scattered across the grass, burst open, contents spilling everywhere. Clothing, books, childhood photos, trinkets, journals, papers. My things, my memories, thrown out like trash. Hands shaking, I rushed forward, picking up a photo of Dad and me building a cardboard fort. The glass was shattered. No, my voice cracked. No, no, no. I ran to the front door, fumbled with my key, and it didn't turn. They had changed the locks. Before I could process the betrayal, the door swung open. Fiona stood there still in her funeral dress, her face arranged into a smug, polite smile. "Oh, good," she said lightly. "You're here to collect your things." "My things? Why are they outside?" I demanded, throat tightening. "This is my house now," Fiona replied, crossing her arms. "Dad's finally gone, and as his only child, I inherit, not you." I shook my head. "You couldn't even wait until after the funeral." "Why drag it out?" she said, shrugging. "Mia needs the space. She'll be taking yours." Mia appeared behind her, leaning against the doorframe, scrolling on her phone. She didn't even glance at me when she said I always wanted a bigger room. My heart splintered. I felt my chest close up, the edges sharp and suffocating. I swallowed back a sob, refusing to let Fiona see me break. I walked away. Not because I wanted to, but because if I stayed, I would drown in the anger boiling inside me. That night, surrounded by garbage bags in my dorm room, I felt lower than I had since Dad died. Fiona had taken everything from me. The home where I grew up, the home where I healed, the home Grandpa promised would always be mine. And I felt powerless, completely powerless, until the call came. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Miss Gregory," a calm voice said. "This is Mr. Anderson, your grandfather's lawyer. We'll be reading Mr. Henry's will this Thursday at 10 a.m. I strongly advise you to attend." My breath caught. "Will, reading," I whispered. "Yes," he replied. "There are important matters to discuss." Important matters. A new thread of hope, tiny fragile, wove itself through the despair. Fiona believed she had already won. But Grandpa always played one move ahead. Walking out of the lawyer's office with Grandpa's will pressed against my chest felt like holding a shield and a lightning bolt at the same time, protective, powerful, electrifying. Each step away from Fiona felt like reclaiming a piece of my spine she had bent for years. I drove straight to the house, my house, the one Grandpa always promised would be mine someday. But the moment I pulled into the driveway, the world yanked me backward. Their car was still there. Of course it was. Because Fiona never accepted anything that didn't align with whatever reality she invented. I stepped out of my car, my jaw tight, my pulse steady. The front door wasn't just unlocked, it was wide open. I didn't bother knocking. I walked in. There they were. Fiona lounging on the couch like a smug queen. Greg flipping through a magazine like he paid the mortgage. Mia sprawled across the coffee table like it was a personal ottoman. They didn't even flinch when I entered, like the house belonged to them, like I was the intruder. Fiona looked up with casual annoyance. "What are you doing in here?" I blinked. "This is my house." She waved her hand dismissively. "That will is an error, completely invalid. I've already started the process to contest it." Mia rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're being ridiculous. You don't even need all this space." Greg nodded sagely. "This house isn't suited for a single young woman. We're a family, we need it more." A family. That word again. Sharp as a blade. But this time I didn't bleed. "It's over," I said calmly. "The lawyer already told you. You have until the end of the day to pack your things and leave. If you're still here by tonight, I'm calling the police for trespassing." Fiona laughed an ugly, humorless sound. "You wouldn't dare." I met her eyes cold, steady, unshakable. "Try me." I left before any of them could respond, driving straight to a locksmith and explaining everything short, straightforward, without the emotional cyclone underneath. He agreed to meet me at the house that evening. When I returned, the situation was exactly how I expected. They hadn't moved. Not a single item was packed. Fiona was pacing. Greg was tense. Mia looked offended by air itself. "Time's up," I said from the doorway. Fiona whirled around. "This is insane, Mary. Do you have any idea how difficult it is to find a place on such short notice? Have some compassion." The word snapped something deep inside me. Compassion. My voice cracked like thunder. Where was your compassion when you threw me out, when you stole my room, when you tried to take Dad's college fund, when you tossed my childhood memories onto the lawn like garbage? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Greg stepped forward, puffing himself up like a righteous peacock. You need to grow up. Families make sacrifices. I did, I said, for years. Now it's your turn. He shut his mouth. Mia finally crossed her arms, voice sharp and nasally. It's so petty to throw us out. It's not like you need the house. What are you going to do with a giant place like this? Be lonely. I stepped closer. Whatever I decide to do, it won't involve being walked over by any of you. The locksmith arrived at that precise moment. Perfect timing. Ready for the lock change, he asked. Fiona's face twisted. You called him here already. This is unbelievable. We'll sue you. You're welcome to try, I said simply. The locksmith worked quickly. Fiona stormed out first, muttering curses under her breath. Greg followed with their bags, slamming drawers and cabinets like he wanted the house to remember his presence. Mia stomped around dramatically, knocking over a vase by accident and glaring when I picked it up. When they finally carried out the last of their things, Fiona turned back, her face red and shaking. You're no daughter of mine, she spat. I looked her straight in the eyes. Then stop pretending you ever were my mother. She recoiled like she'd been slapped. Greg hustled her to the car. Mia slammed the door. Their engine roared, sputtered, and disappeared down the street. Silence filled the house. Actual silence. Not the heavy, suffocating kind I grew up in. A peaceful silence. A silence that felt like possibility. The locksmith handed me my new keys. All done. No one can get in now but you. I thanked him and closed the door gently, the opposite of how Fiona had closed every emotional door in my life. For the next few days I cleaned, I organized, I breathed. I wandered through the house like I was rediscovering something sacred. I found Grandpa everywhere in handwritten notes tucked inside cookbooks in a sweater, draped over a chair in the smell of cedar and old coffee in his study. One afternoon, while clearing out the attic, I found a small envelope labeled, For Mary. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten note. Mary, if you're reading this, it means I've left this world. But I want you to know something clearly. I trust you. Not Fiona, not Greg, not anyone else. You. This house, the cabin, the land, they are yours. Because you know what family truly is. Take care of yourself. Take care of your future. And keep the photos in the attic. Some memories are worth carrying even when they hurt. I'm proud of you, kiddo. Grandpa Henry. I sank to the floor, clutching the letter to my chest, tears sliding down my cheeks. Not the broken kind, but the cleansing kind. Grandpa had believed in me long before I ever believed in myself. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was freedom. It was closure. It was a beginning. And as I looked around the house that was finally unquestionably mine, I whispered into the quiet, I'm home.